Have you started?
Oh, I
recording?
hit start. I totally hit start.
Oh, well, you could have.
We can put this at the beginning, like it's so natural, it's so effortless.
A lot of podcasts do like a little clip,
Yeah,
and then they go into the intro music.
yeah. Well, we're not like other podcasts.
That's a good point. We're not like other podcasts.
No, not at all.
Can you cut that out and put it in the beginning?
Oh yeah, I could
All
totally
right.
cut that.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to the Press Y podcast with Gunnar and Pat. I'm Pat. We're switching it up a bit. You know, Nintendo Switch.
That's
we did that at the
sound.
same time.
Oh,
yeah.
that's
Oh
cute.
wow. Look at that. Anyway, let's get into the news.
Oh, I like that little Keemstar throwback. Yeah, so I'm Gunnar. Yeah, welcome back to this week's podcast. Sorry, we're a little bit late. Patrick was at camp this week.
I was a counselor, not a camper. I'm a big, strong man.
He's a big, strong man. One of those things. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about some news that happened this past week. There's quite a few big things that happened, but we really want to discuss them and see the implications for everything that's gone on. And the first thing we're going to talk about is actually something that came about, I believe, on Sunday, is that the ESA, the Entertainment Software Association, accidentally leaked the personal info of over 2,000 game journalists and other media on the E3 Expo website. So anyone
saying E3 Expo is redundant.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You idiot.
Do you know what E3 stands for?
Electronic Entertainment Expo.
Yeah, that's good. Anyway.
Also, I'd like to point out ESA also stands for Extreme Sex Addicts, an organization of which I am not a part.
Oh, I thought you founded that.
No, remember first episode 1. I said the only thing I love more than my virginity is my pink and green Joy-Cons. I stand by that. I will till the day I die.
All right. Anyway, so the ESA accidentally leaked out the personal info of over 2,000 game journalists and other media. So this is a pretty big deal. Thankfully, nobody knows who we are, so our information wasn't leaked out, and we weren't at E3. I want to go to E3. Let's do that one day. You want to do that one day?
Probably not.
Yeah, not if they're going to leak out our information. But, this is a big oof for everyone involved, unfortunately. And in fact, it was actually on a spreadsheet that was readily available to download on the E3 website, which is that's a pretty big oversight. And
I will say it's not nearly as big of an oversight as when Jake Paul doxed Post Malone.
That was I remember that. That was so dumb. That was so dumb. But I was actually just reading on gamesindustry.biz that they just reported that E3, the ESA had actually leaked this information in 2004 and 2006 as well onto third-party websites, but nobody seemed to have grabbed it like they grabbed this information. So they have a history of doing this. It's pretty. That's not good. That's not very professional, especially for a company that's been doing a big expo like this for so long and also has so much notoriety.
I would say
in the video game industry. You'd say it's a bad?
I'd say it's bad.
I'd say it's a big fat oof. You know what I'm saying?
I don't say that, but yeah.
You don't say that. All right. Well, anyway, let's move on to the Fortnite World Cup.
Are we actually done with that story?
Oh, we're done with that story, bro. We're moving straight on.
No, I'm being genuine right now.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought we were just going to talk more about it.
Oh, let's talk more about it.
No, we can go on.
All right. Anyway, so the Fortnite World Cup. God. The Fortnite World Cup was last week on Sunday, and as you all should know, a 16-year-old from Pennsylvania won $3 million playing a solo in the solo tournament, rather, with 2.3 million people watching, which is crazy. That was live streamers, or people live streaming it, rather. So he ended up taking home $3 million, probably 1.5 after tax, and yeah, that's awesome. Good for you, kid. But I don't really care much about Fortnite, but what I do care about is the future of esports. And Epic Games is showing how just dominant esports can be. So this one writer from Rob Fahey at GamesIndustry.biz pointed this out, and I've heard this from other people in the esports industry as well, or people who are very familiar with it. Say so, a successful esport is typically something that can be played casually or at a high level. So, there's two very distinct ways to play. So Smash Bros is something that's similar. Smash you can play extremely casually, or you can learn all the techniques.
Longtime stands of the podcast will remember that's what Gunnar pressed Y for on episode 1.
On the very first episode, indeed. Yeah, so, excuse me. So those two things, something that can be played casually or at a high level, and also something that's entertaining for spectators. So, Fortnite's a very entertaining thing to watch So for most people, I don't actually enjoy watching it just because the building makes me dizzy. But, Epic...
Oh, are you serious?
A little bit, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're soft.
Of all the things I can't do, watching Fortnite is one of them. I can play Fortnite. I can't watch it. It makes me dizzy. Anyway,
Jeez.
yeah. Anyway, so the implications here is that Epic Games is showing how legitimate an esport can be. There was a $30 million prize pool behind all the entire competition. That's wild. Like that is so much money. It's actually, in fact, not even the biggest prize pool ever for an esports tournament. The Dota 2 tournament that's supposed to happen this month actually has a slightly larger prize pool, but it's further legitimizing and making mainstream esports. And we just had Evo this past weekend, and I watched Smash on Sunday night with MKLeo winning against Tweak. And that actually, Smash Bros. Ultimate peaked out as the most watched game ever on Twitch with the most concurrent streamers, which is that's wild. So the thing about esports, I think, is that actually I don't think this, I know this, it's in its infant stage, right? So it's a very new thing. It's been around maybe 10-ish years, something like that. But we're growing up with it right now. So people under 30, we're growing up with it and we're participating in it. So people in their 40s and up generally don't participate or don't really care about it. It's not like a legitimate form of entertainment, a legitimate form of sport. But I think as our generation gets older and we have kids and all that, then we're going to see it become more mainstream and even get possibly like real sports viewership numbers. I think that's way into the future. That's a complete possibility. But Epic's taking a real big stand here and a real big step of making mainstream their game as an esport. Again, $30 million prize pool, 2.3 million people watching. That's a lot. That's not like 98 million like a Super Bowl, but that's really crazy. That's really, really crazy.
Yeah, I'll say this is actually pretty good news for me because I dabble in esports. A lot of y'all don't know that. I semi-professionally, I play Kid Icarus 2 of Myths and Monsters. I just played around town. I'll get a few $100 here and there, but if we could start hitting those numbers of Fortnite, I would not be doing this podcast. Let me tell you. I would not participate.
But I love having you here, man.
I don't care. I mean, I'm doing it for the money.
All right, yeah. All that money that we got. All right.
Speaking of money, I still have that copy of Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. Please, God, buy it. Someone.
Just comment or hit Patrick up if you know where to get those deets. If you got his leaked information on the E3 website. So yeah, he needs to get rid of that copy, but let's not bring that up too much. That's your own business, right?
I guess, but I just really need someone to buy it.
All right. Okay, let's move on.
I'm so broke.
I thought you were rich, bro.
No, I told you that was a defense mechanism.
Well, I mean, I've seen your house.
Dude, that was foreclosed upon.
Oh, the bank took it? No.
A different organization. I can't tell you who.
You can't tell me who?
No.
All right.
I want to. I wish I could, but I can't.
All right. Is this part of the lore?
Oh, yeah, we were going to establish
Yeah,
lore.
we're going to establish lore.
Yeah, this is part of the lore. That
This
some
is
shady organization has taken my house.
This is officially canon.
Okay, yeah,
From here on out.
this is Press Y Media canon. A shady organization has taken my house and is after me and my family.
Yeah, we just need a subreddit and a Wikipedia page detailing every chapter of this story. All right, okay, we're going to move on. So Nintendo and Tencent are working to localize Switch games for the Chinese market. So as many of you probably know, Tencent is a big publisher and developer for mobile games in China. Very, very, very big. And, Nintendo is... Last April, Nintendo partnered up with them in order to bring the Switch to market in China because the Chinese market is very, very, very well sought after by game console manufacturers and game developers because there's just so many people in China. I mean, it's one of the largest populations on the planet. And, mobile gaming is very big there, but just gaming in general is very big there, despite there being heavy regulation on what can be published. So they have already been successful in getting the Switch console, approved by the Chinese government and ready to go. And, they got all the Tencent services loaded on it and all that. But right now they're trying to get Switch games localized for the Chinese market. And that's going to be the toughest part because, it is content, it's art. And, the Chinese government is going to want to regulate what their citizens see and what they find appropriate or what they don't find appropriate for their market, as well as maybe changing things in game to fit that mold. But they had about 4 games that they were premiering. And so we'll just kind of see where that goes. If Nintendo's able to get their product in the market, out there, then that would be really, really awesome because they'd be able to sell just a crap ton of Switches. And I think this isn't the first time that they've tried to enter the Chinese market before. I don't believe.
No, it's not. I mean, they don't have huge experience or a lot of experience in the Chinese market, but they've released a few games. I believe like Galaxy, a few others. I can't think of them off the top of my head.
Twilight and Punch Out.
Oh yeah.
Twilight Princess.
And
it was
Punch
on
Out.
the Nvidia Shield.
Yeah, so they've released a few games on the IQ Player, I believe is what it's called, and the
Yeah.
Nvidia Shield.
Well, the IQ Player was the that Nintendo 64 that they tried to get out there, and I think all they could really get out, I believe, was like Mario 64. I don't remember.
So they have a few games out in China, or that were at one point out in China, but it's not a heavily influenced market by Nintendo. Nintendo's not. I mean, I have no statistics to back this up. I would assume it's not a household name like it is in Japan or in Western countries, but it would be really interesting to see if they can get this Tencent partnership to work. I mean, Nintendo has a bit of a history with kind of screwing over their partnerships. Obviously, that's why we have the PlayStation. That's why we have the excellent Zelda CDI games.
Beautiful.
But it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Really, really bolster Switch sales and Nintendo sales in general, which leads to better production values for everybody, which, I think is a very good thing because that means we get Breath of the Wild 3.
That'd be sick. But I think the important thing to remember too is that China's market for games is primarily mobile focused, and the Switch really does beat on that demographic. But something interesting on that point as well is GamesIndustry.biz actually put out a report saying that over half of Chinese consumers actually prefer to play free-to-play titles, like freemium style titles, instead of like premium titles. So they'd rather play games with ads and microtransactions than titles where everything's baked in. So, it'd be kind of interesting to see what even pops up on the Switch if, freemium app developers, port their games to the Switch in order to target that demographic, and how well Nintendo is able to actually sell their games, because people will be paying however many Chinese currency for that.
But regardless of whether or not Nintendo games sell well, the Switch, compared to the PS4 or the Xbox One, is uniquely capable of supporting mobile games. I mean, we've seen a few ported over to the Switch. The biggest one that comes to mind is Downwell. That was a really cool one by Devolver Digital. Originally came out on mobile, was ported to the Switch in like April or May, I think. I'm not really sure. But the Switch, of all the home consoles, if you want to call the Switch a home console, which you should, I think the Switch is uniquely capable of supporting those kinds of games, which could potentially give the Switch itself more sales, even if Nintendo published games or Nintendo developed games don't reach the same heights that Nintendo would hope.
Right. Yeah. And again, hopefully they have some somewhat modern name recognition as well for owners of Nvidia Shields in China, with the before mentioned Mario Galaxy and Twilight Princess and Punch Out ports and all that. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if this actually happens. If they can pull it off, it'd be really cool if that did happen. So again, it would just continue to support Nintendo's company as a whole. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Activision upsetting fans last week. So they added microtransactions into Crash Team Racing. So again, initially this game launched with no microtransactions, and I believe you said, Pat, that they said they weren't even going to add microtransactions in the first place.
Yeah, they gave a statement saying they weren't going to put microtransactions in it at all.
So the way they implemented it is in the pit stop, where you can typically buy, like skins, characters, etc. for Wumpa coins that you earn in game. So like there is a built-in economy in game. They made it to where you can purchase Wumpa coins in bundles, so that you can essentially speed up your progression and
basically skip the grind.
Yes, skip the grind. So they did make very clear that this won't affect the initial just the economy of the game. It's the same as it is at launch, which is good. I think that's good that they don't change it. But again, it is an artificial way to get rid of the grind. So I'm not big on microtransactions in single player games, but again, we've talked about our views on microtransactions, and it is something that doesn't necessarily affect the gameplay, other than, not being able to play the character that you want, but you still can earn it legitimately, and it's not completely unfair.
Like, for example, if I desperately need the Tonic Bandicoot sports outfit immediately, which, let's be honest, most of us do, we can pay for it, But if I'm old-fashioned, which I'm not, I could just play through the game.
Right.
Basically, I'm saying I bought Wampa coins.
Yeah, so it's a 20-year-old game. And this is, I think, one of the reasons why it's pissing off a lot of fans is that it's a remaster of a game that's about 20 years old. So it's a little crazy that they're monetizing, at least on I guess, a principled base. It's kind of crazy that they're monetizing it the way that they are. But then again, they're also adding a lot of new content into the game. So I think, I mean, honestly, I don't really care that much. I'm not a huge fan of Crash, and it's not something I really grew up with. So I'm sure if they, Nintendo did a remake of Mario Sunshine and made it to where I could buy all the Shine Sprites, like, I think that that's kind of scummy, but still, I could go out there and earn all the Shine Sprites like the developers intended, right? So in this case, you go out there and earn all the Wumpa coins like the developers intended. So I don't necessarily have an issue with it, but I know a lot of fans do, and it is a little scummy on Activision's part. I will admit that. I think the implementation was a little bit unethical because they waited until after the game was out for about a month or so, and then they implemented it. So reviewers were reviewing a game without microtransactions, and they didn't have a tagline to complain about, and it wouldn't make the news in a negative light. And so, they avoided that heat. And this is kind of similar to back with Black Ops 4 and how they ended up adding microtransactions and loot boxes and even guns that you could only get through like loot boxes and microtransactions and stuff like that after the fact. So reviews came out and praised the game for no microtransactions, but everybody knew that it was going to happen. And just in this case, the pit stop did look as if they were going to eventually add microtransactions just by kind of how it's set up and how, like the stuff you can buy kind of cycles through. So I'm not too surprised. I don't think many people are, but I know a lot of fans are disappointed. Personally, that doesn't really affect me too much. I don't really care. I just think the implementation was the part where they went wrong. But do you have any other thoughts about that?
Yeah, again, like we said last week, or last episode, I guess, if you're going to do microtransactions, this is probably the healthiest way to do it. There's no content that's locked behind a paywall as of now at the time of recording. And if that's how you're going to do it and you want to squeeze out a few extra bucks out of people who want to pay, I don't see the harm in that. I know a lot of people disagree, but I think ultimately it doesn't change the experience for people who bought the game expecting no microtransactions.
And expecting a grind as well.
Because I know I bought the game at launch and I didn't expect microtransactions, but I can still play it without microtransactions. It's not like there are courses that I have to pay for individually. So I don't know. It's annoying, sure, but it's not like a mobile freemium.
No,
free
not
play.
at all.
I mean,
and again, the bad part of it, like the worst part of the whole situation, is just the way Activision implemented it, or like the situation regarding how they implemented it. Rather,
I mean, the microtransactions themselves, regardless of how they were implemented, are relatively harmless. I don't want to linger on this too long because we talked about it ad nauseum last week. But I mean, basically, Activision sucks.
Yeah,
we hate Activision.
We hate Activision.
We only like one company, and its name, Miyamoto Corp.
That one. Anyway, EA. Ooh, they're back in the news. Don't we love EA? I love EA.
Extremely awesome.
Extremely awesome. That's what they stand for. So EA had an investors call last week, and an investor asked them, why aren't more of y'all's games on the Switch? So specifically, they mentioned, why isn't Sims on the Switch? Because that specific investor thought that it would fit the demographic of, the Switch owners, right? Well, EA didn't think, they gave a response. Basically, they said that through their internal data and their research, that they've concluded that it's like people who have a Switch also likely have a PS4 or a PC and Xbox, something else to play games on, and that people would much rather prefer to play EA games on a different platform. Okay, well, whenever they again mentioned The Sims, they specifically said that they didn't think that the Switch was a platform for people who like user-generated content, creativity, and customization, which is really, really funny because what's one of the biggest games on the Switch right now?
The port of Kid Icarus 2 of Myths and Monsters.
That's right, it's Mario Maker 2. And what else? You even have Smash Bros. Smash Bros. Is creative. Breath of the Wild is creative. All of these games are creative. And,
1-2 switch.
1-2 switch, yeah. You're just that 1-2 switcher. So it's important here that EA does need to follow what its internal data says because it is a business, it is responsible to its shareholders, and that it needs to make money. So if their internal data is telling them, you probably shouldn't be putting a ton of your games on the Switch, then obviously they probably shouldn't be putting a lot of their games on the Switch. Well, I think it comes to a point of ignorance whenever they look at that data and say, oh, Sims won't work well on the Switch, and then specifically cite the types of things they're looking at in a demographic and say that the Switch demographic doesn't have those things. And I think that that's just ignorance at that point. I don't know if they have bad blood with Nintendo or there's some specific thing, maybe some business deal or relation or something that we don't really know about too much behind the scenes that's keeping them from really wanting to engage with Nintendo and negotiate a deal to get their games on the console. But it's just kind of crazy to see them, straight up just miss out on free money. I think that they would make with the Sims. The Sims has a lot of content to it as well. It's been out for quite a while, and the Sims 4 has plenty of DLC and all this stuff that they can make money off of. So, God, I don't know. I just feel like this is a really big missed opportunity on EA's part, and maybe being asked this question, and maybe with this news story being very, very mainstream, that they will consider in the future actually some other games to put on the Switch. And one other point I'd like to put out is, the reason why Sims would do well on the Switch is for the Switch's demographic, as I mentioned, but that's that's why they need to put that kind of game out, not something like Battlefield. So let's look at Activision, like we were just talking about. They put out Crash, they put out Spyro, but they're not putting out Call of Duty or any of their other titles like that, because they know it wouldn't do well. They probably have internal research as well that states that mascot characters or more creative and fun style games are going to do better on that platform. And so it's understandable why you wouldn't put everything on the Switch. But having something like Sims or any other kind of creative game on the Switch makes a lot of sense. So I don't know. I'm not EA. I don't see their internal data, so I couldn't tell you. But it is interesting that they are responding in the way that they are. So do you have any thoughts?
Not really. You pretty much covered it all. I will say I have a headcanon that Shigeru Miyamoto was once over at Andrew Wilson's house. Andrew Wilson is the CEO of EA, for you casuals out there. And apparently in this headcanon, Mr. Miyamoto took a big stinky poop in Mr. Wilson's home and did not flush. So that, in my personal headcanon, that's the reason that EA is giving a big middle finger to Nintendo. Again, I do have to stress that this is a headcanon. This is not in any way based in fact or reality. This is a headcanon. But if some of y'all aspiring journalists out there could dig into it and see if maybe there's some evidence, I wouldn't be upset. And for those of you taking notes out there, Gunnar and I just had a conversation off mic, and we have decided that this Mr. Miyamoto times Mr. Wilson stinky poop situation is part of our lore. It is part of the official Press Y canon. So if you're taking notes, if you're starting a subreddit,
if you're writing our wiki page,
just keep that in mind.
All right. So that was actually our last story for the day, but we're gonna move on to what we're pressing Y for this week. And since you started us off, I'm gonna let you start us off with the Press Y as well. So what are you pressing Y for today, buddy? This week? Not today. This week and a half. It's been a little while.
So this week I'm pressing Y for how much I hate GameStop. Now, I prefer physical games, so I usually try to go to Best Buy or Amazon. If there were a local mom and pop shop around me, I would go there because it's important to support small business, especially when it comes to physical media.
So ethical.
However, GameStop really, really sucks. I hate GameStop. I put in an order for them to hold it. I went in, and they just would not let me check out until they gave me their whole spiel about how I had to pre-order something because Nintendo likes to short supply, and how if I wanted Fire Emblem Three Houses, I was screwed because I hadn't pre-ordered it with GameStop. Doesn't really make any sense. Really pissed me off. I'm not sure, but I'm like 99% sure if I looked on Amazon right now, I could get a copy of Three Houses.
Actually, no, I looked the other day.
Oh, is it actually out?
Yeah, I got my copy, but I was curious because I heard about some shortages as well.
Okay.
But I don't believe them on the Nintendo short selling it though.
Still, because it's just really annoying. And one time a few weeks ago, I went to go pick up a game because it wasn't in any other stores, and I put it on hold online. Went to go get it that afternoon, and the guy said, "We don't have the game case. We just have the cartridge."
Did they really?
Yeah, and
Oh my God.
they didn't call me to tell me this. They just decided to tell me when I got to the store. And I was like, okay, then I guess I'll go somewhere else or I'll order it online. And he was like, oh, are you going to play the case or are you going to play the game? I was like, well, I don't just want a loose cartridge. And so I left. And then he said, have fun playing your case. And I'll tell you, I was real pissed. I was not happy. And I said I would never go back to GameStop. But I did today.
And look at you.
But I still hate them.
Yeah.
Don't get it twisted. I've been saying it since day one. GameStop sucks.
Yeah. And my local store can't have more than like 5 people in it at one time. Like you
yeah,
can't even have a line. Like there's no line.
The one by your house is actually trash.
It's so bad. Like the line is literally just standing in the normal retail sections of the store.
Yeah.
It's so bad. Yeah.
Also, it's barely even GameStop at this point. Now it's just like
Funko
Pop
Pops.
Figure Stop.
Yeah.
God, they piss me off.
Yeah, I don't like it either. But you know, they're actually doing some restructuring. I don't know if they hired someone else new one, but they're doing a what is it? It's like they're making some stores into more like almost community like centers. So a place where you and your friends would want to go and play games. So they'll host like local esports stuff. Like they'd have like a local Smash Bros. Or Street Fighter tournament or something, as well as like do retro games. I mean,
that's kind of cool, but I already do that at my local Burger King, so.
Okay. Yeah, on like the little Nintendo 64s that they have.
No, that was at McDonald's, bro.
No, I know. I was actually the other day.
Actually, that's what I'm pressing Y for.
I'm
pressing Y for those shitty Nintendo 64s that were in the play places at McDonald's through like 2005. I lived for those things.
The other day I saw a picture of one and I made a mental note to look up on eBay to see if I could buy one because that would be
wrapped in that sticky plastic that just smelled like ketchup. Oh, wow.
And felt like ketchup.
Yeah. Wow. That was a time to be alive.
That was a time to be alive. All right. So this week, I am pressing Y for Minecraft of all things. So okay, when I was like 11, I played a ton of Minecraft, but I haven't played it pretty much in forever. And there's kind of a resurgence of Minecraft going on right now. You have a lot of big YouTubers getting back into it and just, memes, just huge talk and community going on around it. And I saw all the new stuff that they added and, it looked really fun, looked really cool. So I had like 2 of my buddies over last Friday night, and I got to my house at 7:30, and we all had our laptops, and we just did a little LAN party. Playing on the Minecraft Java edition, and we played 5 hours. We played till like 1:30 or whatever, however long that was, and it was wild. We had so much fun, and it's so wholesome. Like a game that I had when I was a lot younger, and just playing it still now, so many years later, and. It's such a timeless game as well. Like the art style is timeless. You can't really go wrong with like the pixelated art style, and the sounds aren't like super.
I don't know if it's timeless so much as it is just intentionally bad.
But that's so timeless about it. Timeless is like
I know what you mean, but
it's a perception. It's not a
Yeah, no, I know, but timeless would be to say something like Wind Waker is timeless because the art style is intentionally designed so that it doesn't look
age.
Outdated. Whereas Minecraft just looks bad, so you just think it's gonna look bad.
It's always gonna look bad. And that's a fair point.
Regardless,
I'm
not disregarding Minecraft. It's fantastic, but
it's its own. How about this? It's its own kind of timeless.
Sure.
Yeah. So
I'll buy that.
You'll buy that. Yeah. So I thought about it, and if it saw a resurgence so many years after it kind of declined in popularity, like is this gonna be a game? Or like a franchise that, our kids are going to have one day, like 10 or 20 years from now or however long into the future, is it still going to be relevant? So it just made me kind of start wondering that. But yeah, that's what I'm pressing Y for. It's an awesome game. Go out and play it if you haven't played it in a long time like me, or if you've never played it at all. It's really fun. But yeah. So thank you all again for joining us on this sort of week's episode of the Press Y podcast. Again, sorry we're late. Life happens. Things happen. People go to camp. Not as campers, but
people take big stinky poops in competitors' toilets.
Allegedly.
Headcanon. I have to tell you that's a headcanon.
Headcanon.
I have to tell you that.
Please hire us one day, one of these companies.
I'm sorry.
It's all headcanon. It's all in fun. All right. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us this week. Patrick, you got any more words? Not about Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze?
Well, it just really shut me down there,
yeah.
so I guess
all right.
not.
Well, thank y'all. See y'all next week. Bye.